I am from Sudan. I used to teach at the University of Khartoum, the law school, and I had to leave Sudan in the mid-80s for political reasons. And I was wandering various places, UCLA, in Uppsala, Sweden, hoping to be able to go back to Sudan. But by the early 1990s, it was clear that the regime was entrenching and it wasn't going to be soon. So I took a position with Africa Watch, Human Rights Watch Africa in Washington, D.C. In 2 years' time, I felt like going back to teaching. And Emory was one of 3 options I had, but it was by far the best option. And one of the main attractions for me to come to Emory was the law and religion program. It's my whole life. I am a Muslim. I feel very strongly about my religious beliefs, but I also believe that religion has to respond to what people's need and to communities and to persons of belief. And the law and religion seem to offer a very interesting intersection of scholarship and policy engagement. And for that, I felt this is the place to be. That it's for me to be able to be a scholar of my field and yet to relate to my personal convictions as a person of belief and to see how religion can play a positive role in social life and political life of communities. Coming from Sudan with such limited resources all my life and finding such tremendous wealth of resources and goodwill and energy, I think the main advantages has been initially to focus and to also to think of new creative ways of making my field, the intersection of my being a law teacher and my being a scholar of religion intersect and interact. And the center has provided that environment and focused, and also that the environment where you can think ideas, you can dream, just imagine things, and people work with you to make it happen. So it was step by step, working through the budgeting, the grant proposals, and then welcoming the people who come. Like I had a fellowship in Islam and human rights. And all I had to do was just simply to dream of the project, and it materialized. And then to see how also I could invite fellows, they could come, and people would take care of it. I mean, their visas, their housing, their health insurance, and they just, within hours or days of their arriving, they are at their desks doing their work. So it is in that way, facilitator, energizer, a home, intellectual and human. That's what the center has been for me. Of course, I came in the mid-1990s, 1995 when I came. Initially, the current problems with international terrorism and so on was not yet upon us, at least or not on that scale. And therefore, it was initially just simply curiosity and goodwill to understand. And as international events made the issues more urgent, and I felt also how the center was responding by also providing more facilities, more possibilities for cross-fertilization, for understanding. And we had projects where we had the senior fellows sharing a seminar for a semester where we presented our work and got feedback from each other. And it builds on from there, I think. I like very much the continuing focus the center had on the family. And that is one aspect where I learned both how similar and different families are and communities are globally. And to see that, again, the same profound concerns that all of us have with our families, the most intimate, the most enduring relationships, and how the law matters, sometimes in good ways, sometimes in bad ways. But ultimately, how we can make a difference about how our family life, our community life is organized by our understanding of the relationship between law and religion. I have come to realize that this center has grown really way beyond my perception and conception of it. I mean, when I travel internationally, most of my work is international. And I hear about the center where I am, whether in Southeast Asia or South Asia or in the Middle East, in Europe. And when people's faces light up when I say I'm from Emory, and they say, oh, yeah, Center for Law and Religion, or Center for the Study of Law and Religion. And so that sense of connecting to something that is growing bigger than life, I might say, from my professional, scholarly, and personal perspectives. I remember that coming from Sudan, where people talk about religion and politics all the time. And to me, that was really what we're talking about. I mean, for me, that religion is really, and politics, as unfortunately what people kill for, but also what many people live by and for. So I was curious to see how American, especially American law professors, were very shy to talking about politics or religion. They would rather talk about restaurants or movies, and I felt that was trivial, that you know, of course, I mean, food is important, and we like the food we can eat, and also art and culture is very rewarding. But for me, I felt something was missing, because religion is such a critical part of life that I can't imagine really a vigorous scholarly community that is not willing to engage religion. And I understand why people tend to avoid talking about religion in the sense of narrow affiliation, because then often you get these confrontational situations. But I think that if people have a wide enough understanding of not only their respective tradition, but religion at large, and human society at large, and history at large, they will find very useful ways of talking about religion and politics. And therefore, I think in this community at Emory here too, I sometimes feel among some of my colleagues in the law school, this reticence, this hesitation about talking about religion, because it's often seen as a narrow sort of partisan confrontational issue. But I also, one of the aspects I have seen the community around the center growing over the years, and I would attribute this to the work of the center, is that people are now more comfortable talking about religion and more comfortable at appreciating the relevance of religion to law and to our political life, our social life at large, more than they have been before. Being a scholar, being an activist, I would say an advocate of certain human rights, for example, and secularism from an Islamic perspective, I have found myself sometimes tending to think that if I produce good enough scholarship and it is engaged to the public issues of the day, somehow people will pick it up and it will somehow influence life and come out of the confines of our institutions into policy making. But often I find that I need to remind myself that it doesn't work that way. That part of my conception of the work has to be how to reach out and communicate the conclusions, communicate the policy implications, and to help people understand the relevance of what is being done. One field in which I would like to see more work done is to do the sort of very focused policy and scholarship reflection on social issues in this country applied to other countries. In particular, as an African, of course, my bias is for Africa, and I will say that Africans have less to work with. Resources and human resources, intellectual resources, institutional resources. And I think we owe to share, for our blessing, we owe the obligation to share. And to share that blessing with African societies in their own local context. I think when we look deep enough and thoughtfully enough, we will find that all human societies and human persons share the same basic qualities and concerns and needs and desires and so on. Often this is colored by our color, by our political affiliations, our religious affiliations, but deep down, we are ultimately human. So my question would be for the leadership of the center, for the future phase of the center, how to appeal to and respond to the human in all of us globally, and not only within the US or within Atlanta and Georgia. Many of the social issues that are relevant to American citizens and American communities are relevant to people everywhere. Health, questions of development, economic and social development, issues of freedom of religion and belief, questions of constitutionalism and the rule of law, things in which this country has been blessed to have such a good record and high standard of achievement. The feeling that these achievements have come over time through a lot of struggle, but now there is enough to share without imposing, without patronizing, without pretending to preach to others. So, for example, I feel that African communities are struggling with issues of family, issues of health, issues of resources and management of resources, accountability, transparency, political stability, constitutional concerns. All of these issues are issues on which we in this country, as an American myself at this point, I would say we in this country are blessed to have a clear advantage. But our best ambassador and our best means of reaching out is to share in sort of with humility, with respect, with sensitivity. And when we do, there is no limit to how far we can take questions and issues and how far we can help people globally everywhere. I think the United States has a stronger tradition and a richer tradition of being an immigrant community and nation. And there is a much stronger depth of experience and a stronger commitment to welcoming people on their own terms. And very much there is a difference between integration and assimilation. And I think that in this country, in the United States, there is a much more readiness and willingness and capacity to integrate rather than to assimilate, not to force people into a preconceived model of you have to be this and nothing but else, but this. I have lived in Europe, in fact, several years early as a graduate student, and frequently I live and travel in Europe for several months at a time. And I see, probably because of the homogeneity of European societies, and that they were more colonizing societies abroad than they were welcoming of other peoples to the continent. Now that Europe, by the end of the 20th century, beginning of the 21st century, is feeling the strains of having to learn fast about how to respect difference. I mean, there is a lot of rhetoric about difference and about the need to respect difference, but it has not been lived in daily experience as it has been in this country. And I think for that reason, the United States is in a better position to provide. I feel more comfortable for my family to be here, even after 9/11. Our children were never exposed to any harassment or antagonism because of that. And I see that how American people, as a people, have responded much more positively, I would say, than the American federal government. I think the generosity and understanding of the American people as a people by far exceeds that of the government in reacting to the 9/11 and its aftermath. And that's why I'm confident and proud to be an American, because I feel that I can do my work here, live my life here, much more comfortably than probably anywhere else, including my own home country, Sudan. I think that the part of the problem is that the whole question about how the United States is perceived internationally is so much a product of impressions or perceptions of what the media portrays and what the foreign policy of the United States federal government is projecting. And I wish, and I have said it many times to friends and colleagues all over, including last week I was in Doha, Qatar at a conference, and I said it also, that I wish people could see more about this country in terms of what is here and how people's lives are actually, than what they would perceive in terms of American foreign policy. And I think that, with all due respect, I say that the foreign policy of the United States has done tremendous disservice to the people of the United States, because it does not project the generosity, the understanding, the complexity, and also the ingenuity of social interaction and life in this country, inside the country itself. That is, I think, what people are reacting to. They are reacting to the American foreign policy, which has not been, with all due respect, I say this again, has not been productive or constructive for the benefit of the United States itself, as well as of other peoples in the world.